this life's a minute. I mean, some of you have lost children, had miscarriages. Those little ones maybe lived a minute, maybe an hour, maybe 5 hours, but listen, they're in eternity with Jesus. Some of us may live 70, 80 years, but this life is going to be a blink compared to eternity. And so the reality is that we have to think of this life as so temporary and so short that we can think more about how to base what we do now on what's going to happen later, on eternity. Guys, I've done, and I counted them up this past week, I've done about 70 funerals in 5 years. And I've been in ministry for 25 years. So you figure, you do the math. I know there have been years when I've done a lot more, and some years when I've done a lot less, but in the last 5 years, I've done 70 funerals. And so one of the things that I always do with a family as I sit down with them is I ask them, about their loved one. How'd they grow up? Where'd they go to school? Were they involved in things in school? When did they get married? How'd they meet their spouse? What was their family life like, And then I always try to close with, in talking about their life, okay, what were some of the things they loved to do? Some of the things that really stood out and made them who they were. And here's what's really sad. As I talk to these families, some of them don't want to meet with me before the funeral. Some families are like, let me just talk to you over the phone because I don't have a lot to say. I'm like, wow, that's sad, Some of them, because of the way they've lived their lives and the way life has played for them, they have a wife and then 3 or 4 ex-wives, that are at the funeral, or a husband, or maybe just 2 or 3 ex-husbands. Children from several different fathers or mothers, and none of them like each other, and they're all bickering back and forth. Some of the funerals I've done were for addicts who stuck a needle in their arm and ended their life and left their children behind. Pretty tough funerals. And the reality is, many of the funerals I do are for people that were highly educated, very successful people who never gave God the time of day. I always ask this question when I'm talking with families to prepare for a funeral. Here's the question. Here's the question I'm going to ask your family. If I'm around when you pass away, I'm going to ask this question. What was their relationship with God like? You know what I hear most of the time? They didn't really talk about it. Or they didn't go to church. Or they just, they were great people. They were moral people. They were successful people. They were great parents. But they didn't give God the time of day. And in a very nice, kind of backward way, that's what families often are telling me. Very few families ever talk about, well, God was first in their life and everyone knew it. Few ever talk about how other people's lives were changed. Listen to this. Very few talk about how their mom or dad changed the lives of other people because of their commitment to Jesus Christ. Few ever use terms like they were selfless, they were sacrificial, they were unconditionally loving, they were a servant of God. And so what will your story be? Will those be the kinds of things that people can say about your life? See, I honestly believe that God gave us the ability to choose how we live our life. I mean, I don't think anything forces us to make sinful choices, and I don't think God will force you to choose Him. I said that this past week to a funeral, a memorial service we had right here in this room a few days ago. I said, God will not force you to choose Him. It is completely up to you. But God gave us the ability. Here's what I love. God gave us the ability to write our story in 2021. I don't care what your story was in 2020 or in the last decade. I don't care how many mistakes you've made, how terrible it looks. What I want to see, what God wants to see, is He wants to see you make the choice to say, I'm going to determine what my story looks like in 2021. I wonder, if you died at the end of 2020, what would people have said about you? And now, thinking about this, if you died at the end of 2021, what are people going to say about you? It's an unwritten book, isn't it? It's an unwritten story, and you get to write the story.